Would you like to hear the terrifying story of one of the most horrific planets that can be visited? The barren, desolate and deadly homeworld of the Strogg is absolutely one of the worst places that a human marine could be sent to. The whole history of this planet, even now, has not been completely uncovered. What we do know was discovered through observation and the few samples available to humanity during their war with this brutal species. What really happened to the homeworld of the Strogg? Did a civilization live there before the Strogg arrived? And what truly makes it a planet to be feared? Here, we explore the lore and story behind Stroggos. In a galaxy far, far away from planet Earth, there was the planet of Stroggos. Just like many other worlds, this giant mass orbited a sun and had several moons. To date, these 3 moons have not been named. They would, however, become extremely useful to the dominant species that would eventually make the planet theirs. From observation and analysis, Stroggos was pretty similar to Earth's gravitational pull, size, and oxygen levels, the perfect place to cradle life. Although the planet has fallen so far over the years, it is believed that this barren wasteland was once home to life with oceans, mountains, and various species that made each region their home. In the present day, humanity only discovered a desolate planet with vast deserts, towering mountains, and deep canyons. A planet that was once full of life, stripped away piece by piece. The question was, what could have made this much of a change to Stroggos? The rise of the dominant species of Stroggos, the Strogg, is still shrouded in mystery. Where did they come from? While humanity could not discover the true history of this race of war, several members of the Space Marine Corps came up with their own theories. One of the Space Marine Corps believed that the Strogg were what remained of a race of artificially created super soldiers. These soldiers had been formed to fight a war centuries before for an ancient, advanced civilization. This grand war had led to the complete collapse of the civilization. All that remained were the warriors they had crafted. The Strogg had been designed with no empathy and a thirst for war. Without any leaders to guide or control them, they adapted and claimed Stroggos for themselves as they made use of the remnants of their creators' technology to improve themselves. A leader, the PATRON, took over leadership, and the Nexus, a giant advanced brain, was developed to command the Strogg soldiers. While this theory is interesting to think about, another Marine had a different theory. The Strogg were in fact extremely similar to humanity. As they evolved, their level of the understanding of science and technology advanced immensely. At one point, they became a little too reliant on their technology. As a result, they pursued their evolution through technology and became a combination of organic material and machine. There was also the theory that this race encountered a divine creature within her realm, the Shub-Niggurath, and it changed them. Despite which of these theories is correct, or whether they are correct at all, upon the rise of the Strogg, the PATRON guided his species into an endless wage of war. Unfortunately, this came at the cost of their planet. In order to become the strongest army, the Strogg mined every resource that they could from their planet. They constructed countless factories across Stroggos, and inside them, smelted the extracted metals into armor and weaponry. They used fossil fuels to power their civilization and erected a large railway system to transport materials across vast distances. As the Strogg civilization of war grew, Their factories polluted the air around them, and toxic waste was discarded into the environment. In essence, they had entered the equivalent of the human age of industry. While the majority of our species would move on to develop safer ways to use and dispose of dangerous materials, the Strogg did not. They stayed within this age of global industrialization, and over the years, their waste is believed to have had an extremely horrific effect on the surroundings, atmosphere, and natural wildlife. As of now, only 3 variations of wildlife have been discovered. The rest are believed to have simply become extinct as a result of the Strogg's adaptations to the planet, or they were assimilated into the Strogg army. The creatures dubbed mutants were exactly what they were called. Once an ape-like animal, mutated by its toxic environment into a violent creature with deadly teeth and claws. These were located across vast regions of Stroggos, and was deemed an almost certain death if these mutants were encountered within the various enclosed cave regions of the planet. Within what was left of the oceans, Strogg factories, and even further afield in the Badlands and Outlands, barracuda sharks were typically discovered in packs. These were very similar to the sharks of Earth, as they also offered a painful death if a space marine were to fall into their territory. Also within the Badlands, the Gek were also discovered, typically found within swamp and canyon regions. These creatures were just as hostile towards anything they encountered, even the Strogg. The traversal of Stroggos was extremely hostile. The Strogg themselves sought only to conquer, capture, and utilize what they could of organic life, and what remained of the wildlife was hostile and killed without hesitation. The Strogg cared only for war. There were no civilians. They all had a place in the army. Workers, soldiers, scientists, each role was important. The oceans, save a few, became barren. Dangerous swamps formed, and for miles and miles, all that could be seen were factories, data relay towers, military industrial centers, transportation hubs, and various other military installations. Their industrialization, however, was not limited to Stroggos. When the Strogg eventually developed spaceflight, they looked to the stars. Within their only known and capital city, Cerberon, the Macron guided the Strogg. With access to Stroggos' moons, a secret base was constructed within the planet's asteroid belt. The only way to access it was through an advanced teleporter in the inner chamber of Cerberon's palace. A secret military base was also set up on one of the moons with hangars to house the vehicles of the Strogg fleet, and a large military installation. The Strogg had destroyed their planet. However, their domination and use of all organic life was not limited to their own planet. It spanned across the whole universe. For as far as the eyes could see, Stroggos consisted of communications buildings, industrial facilities, warehousing districts, tactical command centers, and military bases. Within the Cerberon Palace, a black hole generator was also used, in combination with slipgate technology to explore the universe for organic life to conquer and assimilate into their armies. It was here that a highly advanced gravity well was constructed to protect Stroggos and the moons from any assault, a device that was designed to freeze any invaders in place to be taken out one by one. On one of these missions, coordinated by the Nexus, the Strogg came across planet Earth. This was just one of the many planets the Strogg had encountered. This one, however, would put up more of a fight than the others. The Strogg fleet was strong, and this first war between the two species lasted for years. Many of Earth's cities were destroyed in the Strogg's never-ending thirst for battle, as millions of humans were either killed in this conflict or captured and taken back to Stroggos. Humanity did eventually fight back this alien force and pushed the Strogg off their planet, but this was not the end of the conflict. In an attempt to stop the Strogg and to protect Earth from a future assault, humanity's scientists managed to manipulate the technology of their invaders and attempted a counter-assault on Stroggos. The details of the several operations to take down the Strogg are vast. However, on their arrival on Stroggos, the Space Marine Corps discovered what had happened to the millions of captured humans. For those strong enough, they were subjected to the barbaric Stroggification procedure, in which they were mutilated into Strogg and controlled through a neurocyte chip in their brains by the Nexus. This was truly a fate worse than death. For those not strong enough or not of use for the Strogg, they were instead broken down into a chemical solution called Stroyant, a concoction that essentially kept the Strogg alive and healed them. The Strogg could not procreate in the way humanity did, and this was how these fusions of decaying flesh, metal and bone came to be warriors in the Strogg army. This war on Stroggos led to more destruction to the planet through orbital bombardment, explosions, and the increased use of the Strogg factories and facilities to continue this war, in which more waste was expelled into the environment. After the successful completion of Operation Last Hope, a partially Stroggified Corporal Matthew Kane not only killed the Macron, but he also destroyed the Nexus that controlled almost every Strogg unit. Without a connection to their hive mind and without a leader, the Strogg forces were, for the first time, able to think and act for themselves. Matthew Kane, however, did receive orders from a new, unknown force. A force that suggested that this war was far from over. It looks like Stroggos will simply continue to act as a battleground in a never-ending war. The planet of Stroggos is by far one of the worst places to visit in the universe for a human, or any species. Only the strongest survived. Despite how the Strogg came to control Stroggos, their impact on their world and universe was cataclysmic. They essentially poisoned Stroggos. The wildlife either died, was adapted, or mutated. Countless species from other planets were brought to Stroggos and transformed into new units, and the whole planet basically became a military base to pursue other worlds. Looking back, if we were able to discover the true history of Stroggos, the knowledge of possible civilizations, plant life and wildlife that existed, it would make this story much darker than it already is. If we knew how far Stroggos had fallen, would that really change how humanity feels about the Strogg? As of now, it appears that humanity won their war against the Strogg. We can hope that this will allow the planet to heal, and maybe the Strogg, without a connection to the Nexus, will help rebuild this world. However, we all know that the Strogg are resilient and undying. We just have to wait and see how this will play out. Welcome to the first Quake video of 2024. I have so many topics lined up to explore. Stroggos is a pretty interesting tale. The exploration of Stroggos, theories put forward by the Marines about where the Strogg came from, and the ability to actually see what impact this twisted species had on the planet was remarkable to see. I feel like the developers gave us just enough concrete information with a little theory to make this story interesting. At this point, I am happy to not completely know those details about a pre-Strogg Stroggos. I really wanted this video to be about Stroggos and basically how the Strogg ruined the planet. Stroggos and the Strogg are linked so closely, and it was tough to stop going on tangents about fascinating lore about the Strogg themselves. I will dedicate a video about the Strogg in the future. I think that was everything I wanted to say. Please share the video, please like it if you did. Most importantly, subscribe if you are interested in seeing more lore. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Orin X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis, Blaze of Glory, Cole Sherman, Yauli Rodriguez, and Nabar. Would you have liked to have seen a pre-Strogg Stroggos? What is your favourite Quake game, and what would you like me to cover next? Please let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.